That's the thing, is that sometimes he's proof, especially, that even if Vince gives you a bad gimmick, if it doesn't go on too long and Vince loses enough interest and you've got enough talent and you get the opportunity, you can show it, but it doesn't happen more often than it does that way, where you never get really a chance to show, whatever.
I understand DiBiase, especially as a heel, was a good talker, but because of his height especially, why did Vince always want to make him a manager?
Well, because he was a good talker, and because also Teddy, he was retired at that point, and didn't Teddy have a Lloyd's of London policy also?
I believe so. Or something happened that he could never wrestle again.
Yeah, so he could still contribute in terms of he was a good promo, and everybody knew the $1 Million Man was an ex-wrestler, so yes, he's 6'2" or 3 or whatever he was. I don't think that was a bad thing necessarily for him. It's when the manager that was never a wrestler was twice the size of one of the guys, and that was an issue. But the thing is, there's, as we've seen with a variety of people, there's a difference between being able to talk and get yourself over as a wrestler and being able to talk and get your talent or your talent's issues over as a manager. And also, to be honest, again, as we mentioned, the ringmaster gimmick was the shits. It just wasn't. And then he gave him the $1 Million belt, which was at that point, 10 years previous. And that's when, to be honest, one thing that old Shitstain used to say that I agreed with was that Vince was needed to modernize the approach. He couldn't do the honky tonk man, bless Wayne, did not exactly fit into the WWF of 1997 because of the gimmick being so tied to the 80s. It was retro shit. You can have history, but you can't. It's like now with the LWO, that was 25 years ago, and they're doing it now. And I don't know that there was a big call for it to come back. So Vince would a lot of times go to, give him the $1 Million belt and put a Hall of Famer in his corner or whatever. That'll get him over. Well, not really. Not, we want to see somebody different. He doesn't have anything to do with the $1 Million belt or the $1 Million Man or the honky tonk man or whatever the fuck. So, that's often a problem with Vince.
Yeah, I mean, the ringmaster came in right around the same time they brought in all those guys like Tracy Smothers and everyone and gave them all silly names or silly gimmicks, because one of the scenes where Brett accepts the challenge from Steve Austin, there's T.L. Hopper next to Steve Austin in the back.
Yes. And again, I won't go off on a tangent here, but I will. None of those guys were meant to come in and have gimmicks at all past the ones they might have already had and been using as their name or their, gimmick that they wrestled under. It was meant because Vince was constantly complaining about we have no variety because he had the smallest talent roster through whatever reason. Early 1996, there was almost nobody on the roster. It was like 15 guys on each side. And you couldn't have TV matches that were different from your arena matches that you expected people to pay to see back in those days. That was still, that and pay-per-view was the primary revenue source. So I said, let's bring in, on not a full-time basis, but a part-time basis, recognized wrestlers from different parts of the country to have competitive TV matches with our stars and put them over. You bring the guys in, get them a win or two on television to establish they do beat someone sometime. And then if you don't beat it to death, you can have them do 3 or 4 jobs over a period of 3 months on television to bigger stars, have good matches, blah, blah, blah. That turned into, let's take all these guys, give them ridiculous names and fucking ridiculous gimmicks and beat them on TV every week. So they became the same as the job guys we had fucking previously. But that's what was going on there. Yes.
The goon.
Poor Bill Irwin, because in his interview with Vince, he made the mistake of saying he had played some hockey because he's from Minnesota and he'd played some hockey in, I guess, college. And he became the goon trying to fucking walk around on goddamn ice skate looking fucking wrestling boots.
If I had an interview with Vince, I would just say like exactly what I wanted to do. Like, so tell me, about your life. Vince, the only thing I could say to describe me is I love being on vacation. I just love vacation. The only thing I want you to think about is this man loves being on vacation in tropical locales.
Next week on Raw, the debut of traveling man Brian Last.
And then you never show up. You're always in a different location.
Well, you send in videos because you're on vacation. And by the way, when they used to say when Walter Cronkite was ready to step down, the most trusted man in America was ready to leave the CBS Evening News after 30-something years in broadcasting or whatever, highest ratings in television news. The last year or two, he had a lot of guest hosts of the program, and they would say, Walter Cronkite will be back next week. Tonight, he's on assignment, or whatever the case. Well, he had named his boat Assignment. So every time they said Walter Cronkite is on assignment, he was on his fucking boat. Anyway, back to
I was like this guest host. I was like the guest host, like, tomorrow you'll be joined by Joan Rivers.
Well, no, they didn't put Joan Rivers on the CBS Evening News. She was on the NBC Evening News. Anyway,